Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey for the last several years. So thank you, Folgers. We couldn't do it without you, nor would we want to. Also, thank you to Justin Snicker, a.k.a. Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for the contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro you just heard. He is an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind our logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror genre, but does amazing commission pieces of any sort. So tonight, that's it. Wayne Mallows is back. Open discussion, exploring the age-old obsession with spirit communication, looking outside the realm of normal for answers. It's a story, I always say, without risking, sounding too cliche, but it's a story as old as time, with kind of getting into this need for wanting to explore, death. There's always been this fascination with it. But before we get into all of that, hello to everybody in the chat room. Mort, you're first tonight. Thank you for being here. Hey, Kevin, how are you? Vet girl, hello. Hello, Heidi. Hello. Hoffnung, hello. Welcome. Glad you made it. Hello, Kat. There you are. How are you? Hi, Carrie. Hello. Wow, this is awesome. Working in the studio while listening. Absolutely. Well, you'll be there. You'll be there. You'll hear it all. There we go. Wayne. Yes, there we are. Well, New Orleans this time of the year is a whole boatload of fun. I definitely want to do that. So without further ado, Wayne Mallows. Woo! Hello. Woo. There we
Be
are.
careful, get the bird going.
No, Jesus. That's all we need. The bird, the cat,
Oh,
the dogs. Yeah, it's just like a big affair. So, So we'll see if anybody else pops in tonight. Might be a surprise, might not be. I'm just kind of waiting. So,
okay.
So like I said, without the age-old cliche of, a story as old as time, the fascination with communicating with the spirit realm. What is the fascination? Before we're gonna go in a certain order, but in your opinion, like, just give me your thoughts on what is the fascination with, getting answers from the other side, talking to the dead, everything macabre that surrounds it.
I think it's it's the unknown, right? People are always fascinated with the unknown. Why do we climb mountains? Why do we cross rivers and do things like that? It's the unknown. We're fascinated by it. But I also think that it has something to do with, again, without being cliche, it's like that one-upmanship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, who's the cool kid on the block, right? The kid with the tattoo, and then it moves up from there. Right now, who's the cool kids on the block? It's the mediums and the seers and things like that, right? Everybody wants to be in the paranormal. Everybody's had a ghost experience. Everybody's lived in a haunted house. Somebody knows somebody who's known somebody.
Mm.
But I really think it just goes back to a fascination of things that we don't know about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the lure of the unknown, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Um, I mean, if you start getting into, like, we're digging a little bit deeper into different things. So it does go back to ancient times. People have always been captivated by death and what lies on the other side. Attempts to contact the dead in order to obtain knowledge was quite commonplace in many ancient cultures going back thousands of years. And I think a lot of it started with shamanism because it was believed to have been in practice for tens of thousands of years. The shaman would enter into these trance like states through different musical rituals, actually, such as drumming, which was a really big one. They would use different types of artifacts and consume hallucinogens, that would help. And
Most definitely.
right. Yeah. Still happens today. They would allow him to enter into the spiritual realm to communicate with spirits, nature beings, and they would assist him in providing spiritual healing, perhaps some spiritual guidance. And this was something that was practiced around the world.
Yes.
No comment?
Well, you pretty
No,
much said it
nothing.
all.
Nothing.
That's pretty much what it is. It's true, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everything comes from the past. It gets moved forward. I mean, all I can draw on from myself is that when you're in school, right? When I was in like grade school,
Mhm.
and they taught you, this, that, and the other thing. What were you most fascinated with? The stuff they didn't teach you.
That's
The
true.
taboo stuff. Yeah, the stuff that's outside your normal realm of education. I mean, even when I went to like a sort of a religious education, shall we say, as an adult,
Mhm.
and I'd ask questions, and they would be like, "Oh, yeah, that's we're not gonna teach that. We're not talk about that today." But you never
Mhm.
talk about that.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
your religious curriculum, and you're gonna follow that to the letter, even if my question sort of strays outside that realm. It's like, ooh, stay right here.
Yeah.
So then when you're left to your own devices, you go looking for yourself.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
total it's a total fascination. I mean, getting into spirit boards and stuff, which we will talk about. But so hey, let's going through, some of the stuff that I've talked about on other shows. So it's a bit of a plan, so you all have to bear with me, but it's all relevant. What about necromancy or divination? Yeah, right. I've
hmm.
I've been asked to do it. I always kind of fell
Oh, I
over.
know you have.
Once in my life, I kind of went, "Yeah, no, I'm good with not doing that." But what it is, it's like a divination by the means of the dead. It's said to be one of the oldest occult practices in the world. The first book of Samuel in the Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, makes mention of the witch of Endor. In the 11th century, it said that King Saul was concerned about the outcome of a battle against the Philistines and was desperate for answers. This was outlawed, by the way, in Israel before Saul. And he went in disguise to visit the witch, and she would evoke the spirit of Samuel, in which he predicted Saul's death and his defeat. His army did indeed fall, and Saul himself was killed in battle. Now, in Greece, necromancy means divination of the dead again. And going into the temple in Greece, which was the Necromantheon, which was like the oracle of the dead. It's a temple in Greece dedicated to Hades of all deities, and said, to be the entrance of the underworld. So the Romans had their own. The practice of necromancy was documented in many cultures: Persia, Babylonia, Egypt, medieval times, Europe. I mean, this is something that went on and on and on. And even though the church itself condemned it and all of the dark arts that surrounded it, it was ironically responsible for the continuation of the practice. And over time, it maintained that only God had dominion over the dead. And all of those who practiced magic essentially were being deceived by the devil or in league with him. So, you get into all kinds of different, rituals and things like that. So,
Hmm. And I
thoughts?
can't tell you the number of priests I've spoken with who's just like, don't go see fortune tellers. Don't go and see mediums. That's just it'll take you down a dark road. That's just, they're the same people that tell me don't go buy used clothing from Value Village and Goodwill. It might bring something home, right?
Yeah.
So,
right.
I don't know. I mean, I think necromancing, where its roots are and where we see it today are two different things. I mean, when you in today, when someone says, "Oh, I'm necromancing," right? So you think that you're sitting in a graveyard conjuring up a dead body and imparting life back into that body and have it do your bidding. And I don't think it was ever like that. It was literally communing with the dead, to speak with the dead, to speak with the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Got a bit of a bad rap.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it does. A lot of it was misunderstood, and a lot of it was conditioning. Right. So you get a lot of that, but there are a lot of ancient cultures that kept up with it. And there still are practitioners today, for necromancing and such. I remember working with a client, and I don't like to say client per se, but I mean, it's just pretty much what it was. I was asked to come in and assist or consult. And essentially after a year had passed, and again, this need to communicate with the dead. It was like, okay, look, she kept wanting to communicate with her husband, doing voice recordings, things like that. And things that were coming back were not her husband at all. I mean, it was very, very aggressive. And she started working, with people stateside who did a lot of EVP analysis, and they were very encouraging because this is what they did. And her situation just got worse and worse and worse. So in the end, after all of that, she came to me and she said, I want you to assist in bringing my husband forward to communicate. I went, how so? I thought that's what you've been doing all this time, which is getting you in all this trouble. And she says, no, necromancing. I want to bring him back into the physical. I went, yeah, I'm out. I think I'm pretty good right now. And no. So that's that. So again, the fascination for wanting that communication.
Well, I think you have to understand too, like we're born into this world, into a physical plane, and pretty much from, minute one, we are disconnected from where we came from.
Mm-hmm.
We're not connected to source. We're not connected to the ethereal anymore. We're in this physical being. So let's say you live out your life, 50 to 70, 80 years old, right? That's a lot of time spent, not in the grand scheme of things, but in a lifetime. That's a lot of time to spend within the physical plane. And then you lose your partner, you lose a child, you lose a parent. You can get your head around the idea that their spirit goes on and they live on forever and without the physical. But more times than not, I'll hear someone say, well, I know that happens, but I just really miss the physical. I miss that person's voice. I miss that person's touch. And then, if you've had, let's say 40 years with somebody, 30 years with somebody, that's a long time. I mean, my parents were together for 63 years. It's crazy. But you spend that much time with somebody and all of a sudden, whoop, they're gone. There's a big hole, a huge void left in your physical life that you crave, you need. And it's almost like part of you dies right along with that person. And you'll do just about anything to have a little piece of that person back, just to hold, to touch, to talk to again.
Yeah, it's definitely something that that you see happening like constantly through time, with different devices being built and such. And which brings us to the age of spiritualism. This is a huge movement in the 1800s among the upper and middle classes. People were tired of conventional religion, and you see this coming waves, see every few decades and so on. But they became fascinated by the occult and the supernatural. They were curious about ghosts and the ability or possibilities of communicating with them seances became very popular and were the preferred method of receiving messages from the other side. Abraham Lincoln's wife, Mary, actually was a spiritualist and hosted many seances at the White House after their son passed away. So Abraham Lincoln, Harry Houdini, were known to have attended seances in Lilydale, New York. It's a place that I've been to several times, and it's still happening today. This is still a thing. They hold Victorian seances, table tipping, things like that. But anyway, so this was one of the largest, and still is one of the largest spiritual communities in the world. And it was all funded at the time by the Fox sisters, who were known spiritualists. In the 1920s, Harry Houdini visited many mediums, trying to contact his deceased mother, came across many frauds, and started attending seances in disguise, only to reveal all the parlor tricks at all of these events. So it became really big business. Talking boards, were a big thing for contacting the dead in the 1880s. The Victorian movement did bring forth many charlatans, which have been somewhat responsible for the blanket of doubt that followed more into modern times. So let's take it from there. I mean, that's up your alley, big time.
Where do you want to go with it?
Oh, an elf. Hey, every direction. I mean, the Victorians were into everything, like hanging out cemeteries, having lunch, the macabre ghost stories at Christmas. I mean, they were the whole gamut.
Yeah, but that's, again, it just goes back to the whole idea that they were looking for something outside the box. I mean, up until that point, God, it was so rigid. Everything was so rigid. Life was rigid. It had to be a certain way, and there was no other way. People were looking for something different, anything, any sort of difference. And I think, too, in the Victorian era, I mean, the house that I lived in and where we lived, the manor, it was built at the end of the Victorian era. And it was really interesting to me because, sorry, I'm just off topic for just a little bit, but just to give you an idea how the Victorians borrowed from everywhere. I mean, we have like medieval revival pieces that weren't made in the medieval time, but the Victorians loved it so much they created medieval pieces. They're like replicas, basically what they are, right? Anyway, in this house, the windows, they slide up and down, and they're hung with weights and stuff. But the poles on the window, the thing you actually grab with your hand to lift up, the handle, was in the middle of the window. And when I stripped all the paint off these things, I took them to an antique place, to get them evaluated, because I've never seen anything like them. This is this is Canada, basically. And back then it would have been an English colony. And yet every one of these poles had a coiled, Eastern Asian dragon woven into the cast, right? So I was like, this cannot possibly be Victorian. And the gentleman I spoke to was quite elderly at the time, and he said, it absolutely was. They borrowed heavily from every culture right around the world. So it doesn't surprise me when they started looking into like spiritualism and speaking to the dead, because other cultures in Europe and around the world were doing this for years and years.
Yeah, and I mean, we would have guests come to the house to try, for communications. We could talk about that as we get to that
of course,
with the technology. But the Victorians, I mean, when I went to Lilydale, it was very fascinating because there was all kinds of documentation with things like slate writing and the seances and automatic writing and pretty much any form of spirit communication you can think of. I mean, they were doing. The seances were a really big deal, really big events. I mean, people came from all around to do it. Harry Houdini, his primary reason for attending all of these was essentially to debunk, because he just, I guess it was, the literature, it varies. It'll say either his mother or his his other half, his spouse, or, significant other. But whatever the case is there was a code word.
Code word, yeah.
Yes. and that code word was not reached. So he would be very, very observant of the things that were going on, and you would get, table tipping and ectoplasm. Like, all spirit photography to me is fascinating when you can see ectoplasm coming out of something, like those old photographs are, really hard to fudge, right? Film.
Well, I love the negatives. If you can get an old
Negatives.
negative,
Yeah.
you can't doctor that without it being caught. And even before that, on the old silver plates,
Yeah.
good luck with that. Trying to fake one of those. It's not easy. I mean, I remember when you and I held a Victorian seance there, and we basically said, if you want to dress up, you can. And if you don't want to, you don't have to.
Cool.
And people did.
Yeah.
And it was really well, because we picked up on this soldier, which was interesting because it was from the U.S. side, from the War of 1812. And this guy came through so clear, and named, rank, who he was, where he died, his, his battalion number, where they were stationed, where they marched from. And I was just like, well, this is so detailed. And I went and looked it all up, because that's just, the history in me. I got to know, right? I looked out, it's all accurate, 100% accurate. Everything was accurate. I couldn't get over how accurate it was. I'd never even heard of this guy, because he wasn't like one of your top, well-known people that we all know about. He was just a regular guy that commanded a unit, and he died.
Yeah.
But he was there. He had lots to say.
Yeah, it is interesting, I think. And that was just the old-fashioned way of doing things, so it was that was a really interesting evening. We had, spirits just grabbing people's hands, and, a lot of validations that evening for
many
communication. Yeah, it was pretty good. Okay, so we kind of move along a little bit, and along with, of course, the interest came the talking boards, right? Which again became a way of contacting the dead in the 1880s. The Victorian movement did bring this forward. Talking boards are actually a part of many older civilizations around the world for centuries. They've been there for ages. Historic fun fact: a board was used in the ancient Rome to predict the next king.
Wow.
Oh, that's crazy. People have been using boards for a very long time to contact the other side. In China, spirit writing was popular in communicating with the dead, 5th to 13th centuries AD. And it was outlawed like literally only a century ago. I know.
Yeah, no dappling into something that regular folk can get power from.
I know. It's like,
I think when they started manufacturing the spirit boards over here, like I don't mean like by Hasbro and things like that.
They call them the talking boards. Yeah, not so much. Yeah.
I'm just talking like in the early days. I think it was a bit of a departure away from the control. And what I mean is, basically you did not, Mr. and Mrs. Smith no longer had to go to see Joe Medium down the road with a crystal ball and the black curtains. They could buy this board and sit in their own parlor and put their hands on it and have a communication with the other side. So people gravitated towards that because, again, it's one step further removed from, who's in control. That's why they were so popular when they came out, because now you don't have to go and pay and worry. Are you paying this charlatan, or are you paying a real person? Like, is it genuine or not? Now, if for back then, it would be like $1.50 for a board, and you go home and you have a cup of tea, and then you sit with your significant other and see what you can do, right? And then all of a sudden doors start opening by themselves, and dogs walking backwards, and
that could be a thing. Yeah,
well, I guarantee it was a thing.
The Ouija board itself was introduced in 1890 and was considered to be a parlor game. Still is.
Oh yeah, and saw one today.
It's true. And it was, we didn't stop running today. I swear to God. It's like we got in at about like 8 o'clock. It's like, jeepers, hour to showtime. Anyway, It was introduced 1890, was considered to be a parlor game, and was very popular in the early 1900s up until World War One. In the 20s, after World War One, spiritualism became popular once again. So this is round two, right? As so many people had lost loved ones in the war. So it was known to be the magic talking board. The board lost its popularity in 1973 with the release of the Exorcist film, for sure. People became
Can't imagine why.
convinced. Yeah. People became convinced that the board was a gateway to hell itself and essentially were connected to evil. So in the 1980s, brought more books and movies. People became more and more fearful of the Ouija board. In modern times, the board has made a resurgence. However, many people are still cautious, and some are not, being in the presence. It's been known to have had some pretty serious outcomes. In fact, one case, which goes back to March of 2017, fairly recent times, a convicted double murderer, Stephen Young of Pembury, UK, won the right to a retrial, um, essentially because four members of the jury had used a Ouija board the night before, finding him guilty of the murders, to contact one of the victims, Henry Fuller, who told him to vote guilty. So, if there's nothing to it, how would this happen? This was the big question. So, many people who have been plagued by non human entities have confessed to using the board, even in their childhood days, which goes to show you that these things do have longevity. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, they have longevity, all right.
Mhm.
I was one of those foolish children. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I told you that story. That went sideways in a big hurry.
Uh-oh.
So, what, do you want to hear it again?
Yeah. Go ahead. Got a lot of people
Well,
listening.
yeah. I think I was about 17 at the time, and I had a really good friend at the time, and we were just, we were kind of the outcasts. We were like, we're the electronic guys. We were not the jocks by any stretch of the imagination. So, him and I would just be like, yeah, ghosts, yeah, spooky stuff, yeah, haunted houses, ooh, cool, Halloween, yeah. So we were like into that big time. So we came across this Ouija board, and so we started fooling around with it, and I was pretty impressed. It actually could move pretty good, and then we learned how it moves and why it moves, and we got some pretty cool correspondence going back and forth. Anyway, long story short, we hook up with this one spirit who would always come around pretty quickly, and we'd have a really good flow, really good rapport going. The board moved really fast, and so it was kind of neat. Got the spirit's name. It was a female spirit, and one day it basically says, I want to meet you, or you can meet me.
Uh-oh.
Like this, right? And we're like, oh, cool. How do we do that? And it spells out, die, right? I'm like, no, we're good. We're not gonna die, right? So we can't do that. It spelled out, I understand. It took a long for them. I understand. So we never talked about that again for a while. And then it said to us, meet me, no die. All right. And so we're like, okay, so we can meet you without dying. And it said yes. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we'll do that. Yeah, we agree to that. Okay, that's cool. So then it gives us a bunch of little numbers, letters. We didn't make any sense of this at all. Like it would be like, J10, M21. Like, what does that mean? And she'd be like, where I am. Like, J21M. And I'm just like, it
Sounds
makes
like a
no
map.
sense.
Yeah.
Bingo. That's exactly what it was. My friend basically said, I think it's a map. Do you have a map in your car? I said, yeah, I got a map in my car. So I went and got it, laid it out on the desk, and we're doing the where does this go and where does that go? And sure enough, finishes up in a cemetery, not far from where we are. Wow, what are the odds? This is amazing. It works. We're so happy, right?
Wow.
So we figured, okay, so we know where you are, right? So we go trucking down to the cemetery in the middle of the day, and we're talking to the guy, and we said, where's the older part of the cemetery? So we're hiking around, and we don't know what we were looking for. So then we come back, we get the board. So I said, okay, we found the place. Where are you? And she gave us the location, and but she said, she goes like, spells it all out. My marker is gone, or my stone is gone. This is my name, right? So we asked the guy, no records of that, nothing like that, not that far back. So she basically said, there's a great big tree over my grave because that grew over top of me. So it's there. So if you go to the big tree in aisle number L, letter L, by the big tree, that's me. I'm like, okay, cool. When can we meet you? She goes at 12 noon. I'm like, 12 noon, not 12 midnight. So I'm not going in the middle of the night, you know? So sure enough, so we truck on down there at noon and we're all excited. We plop our butts down in the grass by this big tree. And it's about 11:45, and we're just egging each other on. You know, it's like, what are you gonna do? What does she look like? What's gonna happen? What could be? Blah 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 blah. You know, it's a beautiful day. It's July, August, and it gets obviously it's really really cold. I mean, really cold. But the sun's out. There's no breeze. There's nothing, right? I'm like, man, I'm freezing. He's like, yeah, me too. There must be a breeze coming off the lake or something, but there's no wind, right? And all of a sudden, in front of us, you see this really long grass go,
oh,
as if someone sat down in front of us, and we're like, oh, like, I had more hair than it was like,
uh-oh.
So we bolted, we took off running. We ran down this hill to the edge of the cemetery. There's this like 8-foot fence, chain link fence out onto the highway. I don't even remember climbing it. Next thing I know is I'm walking down the highway with my buddy. We don't even know how we got there. It was like terrified.
Oh
my
no.
God. Yeah,
That's
so she never talked to us again, to say the least. We tried, but again, never got her. So yeah, no, good.
Mark says it's an amazing story.
Oh yeah, amazing when you're sitting there at 17 having a wig out. Oh
Yeah, there's so many stories. I mean, I remember growing up and my best friend, this best childhood friend, you know, her brothers, like, oh, you know, they were all older than her considerably. It's like, oh, we're just going to have our friends come over and do this seance, right? And turn all the lights off and all kinds of crazy things would happen. But you had a room full of people. You really couldn't bank on somebody not making sounds. But I mean, you know, we were younger, so she and I were there. I'm having like a sleepover because, you know, I'm like 8 or 9 and Jesus, we're just in there all like, little did I know this is what I would end up doing. But it was just crazy. And then they just got themselves into all kinds of trouble. Like there was so much stuff happening in that house afterwards. We're just like, oh, something to be said for it. I'm telling you, something to be said.
God, there's something going on for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I you know, as you come to learn, a lot of it is intention and things like that. Like the board is a tool, like anything else. So I think it's
you need to be taught, though, right? I mean, it's like flying a plane, flying a car, riding a motorcycle. You need licenses for all this stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, here's a board. Go talk with the dead. Open a door. Like if somebody knocked on your door, would you just swing it open? Or would you go like, who's there? Look through the window or check your, your Ring camera. You know, like, no, just get the spirit board. It's like, hey, who's there? Come on in. It's me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Negative.
That's a thing. But there are many different divination tools, but in the early ages of technology, so the need to communicate with the dead intensified. People started experimenting with ways to accomplish it. Nikola Tesla was said to have invented the first spirit communication device. His device started picking up on unusual sounds, which resembled human speech. And with more tests, he knew for certain that they were voices from the other side. And he said this with great certainty. Every night he would listen to these voices conversing back and forth in a language he could not understand and claimed that they were not from this planet. So in 1920, Thomas Edison was believed to have been working on his own device called the telephone to the dead, yet many believe that it was a hoax. No prototypes or devices were ever really located, and he never did make contact. I believe in his museum there is something there that he worked on that is this said device. Anyway, enter ITC, instrumental transcommunication, with EVPs being electronic voice phenomena. These methods focused on the use of electronic devices to capture disembodied sounds that the human ear could not pick up, or capturing evidence of spirits in photographs, for example. A man named Attila von Zale, an American photographer in the 40s, experimented in capturing disembodied voices on a 78 RPM record. Do you remember those things?
Mhm.
Anyway, it
Sadly,
wasn't.
I do.
I know, me too. It wasn't until he teamed up with a psychologist, Raymond Bayless, in 1956 that he was successful, and only after switching to reel tape recorders. They published a book called Phone Calls from the Dead. EVP research continued into the 50s, and a man named Friedrich Jurgensen unexpectedly captured voices while recording bird songs one day. He went on to spend years doing EVP research. He went on to team up with Latvian parapsychologist Konstantin Araudaev. Hopefully I did not pulverize that. Anyway, together they made more recordings. It was believed that there were more than 100,000 recordings throughout the course of his life. And in 1980, George Meek and Bill O'Neill invented the Spiricom, which was a large computer with 13 tone generators, which spanned the frequency of an adult male voice, and allegedly claimed that the device allowed for two-way conversations. 2002, Frank Sumption created a device that swept through AM radio frequencies and created the white noise, which would allow spirits a way of communicating via radio bands in real time, and it's known as Frank Box. And I am so honored, thank you to a dear friend of mine, being in possession of one of a Frank's box, because he has passed away, and I was just starting to get to know him before he passed away. And he always claimed that he did it for aliens, just like Nikola Tesla basically said, that he believed that these voices were not from this planet. Frank said the same. He sent me a whole pile of voice recordings that he had done. And he goes, I was always interested in talking to aliens, not spirits. So that's a thing. Anyway, So
I think the line is pretty finite in between alien communication and spirit communication. I think they'll use the same basic frequencies to communicate.
Yeah, I think they've more than mastered that. I always go back to the fact that it was so easy for spirits to ride the radio waves, and I go back to experience that I've mentioned before, but for those who haven't been listening regularly, I had right. I had a very dating a guy back in the day, and his mother and I were very, very close. And she said, okay, whichever one of us dies first, it'll probably be me because I'm older. We come back and we notify the other. I said, okay, that sounds like a fair deal. Let's do that. Whoever goes first. So she had passed away, of cancer, unfortunately. She was quite young. And 2 weeks later, like, we had those old voice recording answer machines on the tape, right? But that's what makes it that much more credible, because it's on a tape. It can't be fudged. It wasn't digital, nothing like that. So when you used to call and leave a message on these tapes, it would just beep. And then, it would beep when you hit the next one, and then beep into the next message. What was curious about this is that when I listened to it, it just went through about 3, 4, 5 different beep, like something was trying to talk, beep, like it kept going. But I could hear, the further along it went, I could hear in the background a radio playing. And I'll never forget the tune. It was just crazy. It was just this really slow going tune. Then her voice came through and left a beautiful, clear message. And then she beeped through a couple more spaces, and then it was gone. But the radio for me was that giveaway that sort of lended to the belief that spirits can ride the waves.
Yeah, it makes sense. They're electronic. I mean, frequencies are out there.
It was crazy.
If we are energy beings, it would take nothing to manipulate an energy wave. Nothing.
No.
100%.
Yeah,
And
that was a really good validation because I wasn't into the paranormal. Like, it's not like I didn't have paranormal experiences back then. I had all kinds of paranormal experiences. My whole life has been paranormal in one form or another. Highly strange and for sure. But at this specific time, it's not like it was even so much a thought in my mind, and I had long forgotten about this arrangement that we had. Um, Question, Michelle, has she contacted you since? Actually, about a handful of times, but via a medium. Ironically, I was in Lilydale, and I was having. I used to get spirit paintings done, and in this specific case, he just started drawing, like her initial, and her middle name was Rose. So she drew this Rose, and then he just started, giving messages and things like that. That has happened probably about a handful of times. But I mean, she passed, it was like, I think 1989. So that's pretty cool. It's a long time, but yeah, so she has small amount on a grand scheme of things, but I mean, time is pretty irrelevant. What is a spirit painting? I've had a couple of them done. What it is, when I was in Lilydale, they have a whole pile of mediums there, and they're gifted in many different ways. Some of them are artists, and essentially, what happens is they're probably about 4 or 5 hours long to sit through one of these sessions, and the medium goes into a sort of a trance. And I mean, this specific medium had her eyes closed pretty much the whole time and just started doing these crazy things, just started painting and people. Well, she was just doing people upon and incredible paintings, and colors. And so as she's reading me, she's painting on a canvas. And I had two of them done, here a couple of years in a row. And it was a really fascinating experience because she also put it all on tape for me so I could hear everything that she was saying, all the while doing these paintings. So where they painted my spirit guides. There were spirit guides. There were people from my past life, people within my space. It was pretty interesting. Like, I highly recommend it if you have the opportunity to do it. It's just like fascinating. It just kind of takes it to a different level and has a different a different feel to it altogether. And what was fascinating at the time is I've had many incredible friends who are mediums, and I was talking to a medium friend of mine after I'd been there because it's my researcher brain. I just need to make sure like it's legit, right? So I would have a reading, then I would go get my spirit painting done by somebody else. But then when I come back, I would sit down with a friend or have another reading, and he would pick up on everything in the painting, and there's no way he could have known it. I just got back with it, never showed it to anybody. Many people have never seen these paintings. They've never seen the light of day. They just hang in the office or they're just set aside. And it was very, very interesting. No,
do you think
no
if I got a
voices that I
spirit
know of.
painting, sorry?
No, yeah, she just said any voices that come from the tapes. No, just the medium. Sorry, go ahead, Wayne.
I was going to say, if I ever got a spirit painting done, do you think it would just be a blank canvas? Because nobody can read me, right?
I have a
It'd just be,
question for
I
you.
sit there for 4 hours and they just hand me like a white canvas. Like, here you go.
You're very welcome,
Truth?
Misha.
Come on, you know it's true.
Yeah. Question for you. Can you tell the story of your near-death experience again, please?
Mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. That's a while ago now. I was there was a big meningitis scare running through the city at that time, and I was really quite sick. I had high fever, and I ended up going to a clinic. They said if the fever gets any higher, go to hospital. Do not pass go, do not connect $200. Right, go straight there.
Yeah.
So I did exactly that, and I'm sitting in there as you wait in emergency because you're not in emergency, you wait. And my head was splitting. Like, honestly, I felt like I had an axe in the middle of my forehead. Like, I'd never had a headache that bad in my life. And being me and being Canadian, it's just I'm endowed with immense kindness and patience. I waited there for a very, very long time until finally I got up. I went to the little window and I said, I know you're busy and stuff, but can you please tell me how much longer this is going to be? Because I think I'm dying. Like, this is terrible. And she goes, probably 20 minutes. I said, okay. So I turned around and went to sit down, and then the whole room just kind of like this. All I remember is trying to do the side step. I was doing that, trying to keep my balance, and that was the last I remember in this world anyway. And next thing I know, I'm in an old sailing ship, old galleon, where they have the steering wheel at the back and the bow at the front, and then there's this lower section in the middle where the cargo and stuff was. And you were still outside. It was 3 masts, and I was in a really bad storm. And I looked around, and it was pouring rain, it was lightning, and the waves were crashing over the boat. But the unusual thing about it was that the boat was the ship I was on was not pitching and rolling. It was just dead straight. Like the waves were pounding it, but it wasn't really having an effect. So I kind of look around, and I realized I'm in a black raincoat, like the old fishermen used to have, with the black kind of visory kind of hat that went down your back. And so are all of my buddies. Everybody in this ship looked like me. They're all sitting there soaking wet with the rain, and just they're all looking forward, and they're not looking at me. And I'm kind of like taking it all in, going like, so what's going on? I look ahead, and we're heading towards like a cliff side, like a big shoreline. And there was this lighthouse, and this beam of light came straight off the top of this cliff, right over top of the ship. So I'm like, kind of like, where's it going? And it goes right to the back of the ship where the pilot, the captain of the ship, would be. And that individual was in like a shroud, like a Grim Reaper kind of outfit, black, and had his hands at sort of 10 and 2, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock kind of positioning on the wheel, and kind of leaning a little bit to keep the ship straight. And the light went right into that person's face, and it lit up the shroud, but there was no face. It was just pure white. You couldn't see anything. And I'm like, ooh, oh boy. I look back at the lighthouse again, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, am I dead? Like, what the heck is going on? And I'm trying to process it. Like, I wasn't scared. I was a little rattled, but I wasn't scared. And in my right ear, this really gentle, it was a female voice, like totally pleasant, benign, quiet. And she said to me, do you want to stay or do you want to go? And I didn't even answer the question. I just thought, no, I got my kids. Boom. Just like that. I'm back in the hospital. I'm on this table. There's lights and people and yelling, and I feel horrible. My head is pounding again. I feel like I have an axe on my forehead again. And the first words I hear as I come out of the ship into this bright light of this OR kind of room was this woman saying, I have a pulse.
Oh God.
I'm like,
that's frightening.
Oh yeah, it was pretty intense. And I asked this woman a few minutes later, I said, like, can you please give me something for the pain? Like, my head is going to explode. And she goes, we just have to make sure your vitals stabilize and everything is okay. And then the doctor will give you something. We just want to make sure that we don't overdose you on something before we know what your blood work is like. And then she said, how can a guy that's got such great big veins in his arms have nothing in them? I'm like, I don't know, but I just feel like ass. Anyway, the next couple, 3 hours later, I said to the doctor, comes in, he goes, oh, you got some color back. You're looking good. And I said point blank, I said, did I die? And he looked at me just straight face. And he's like, did you die? No, you didn't die. I didn't die. He passed out. Like, it's all it is.
You're here.
You're fine. You're fine. But I know hospitals pretty well, and they don't keep you in overnight for nothing. Like, if I just passed out because I had a high fever, they would have just sent me home, take 2 Tylenol, call me in the morning kind of thing, right? They kept me in overnight. So I know something fishy went on.
Now, do you think because of that experience, you often hear, like, we talk with Bubbles, and she goes, like, she had abilities and this happened to her, and she came back and she just felt like they were enhanced. Like, do you feel you had enhanced abilities or anything like that, things changed for you after that?
I think if I had any enhanced abilities, they probably took them away when they were on the ship. make sure I came back stupid.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't really know. I've told you before, like I just, if I'm gifted, I can't control it. I don't know. I'm wrong more times than I'm
You
right.
are. It's
Yes,
just
I
like,
am.
we all
I'm
know you
wrong more
are.
times
We
than
all
I'm
know
right.
you're gifted. Now, a lot of people
Well,
say you're gifted. You're just in
I don't know.
denial.
Well, I'm wrong more times than I'm right, and I often say I'm just a really good guessologist.
Right.
Read the body language. I can guess at it and be right some of the time. So
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the different people that we've had come to the manor. We used to have events at the manor, and sometimes we would even open it up for a little while where people could come in and yes, the bird is there. Yes.
Well, bird's here,
Zara,
cat's here.
her name is Zara, for those who are wondering. We're bird sitting for family. So, hey Mel. But we did open up the house for some time where people could come and have like a paranormal experience. And in doing so, because this is what they would want, this is what they wanted. The house is haunted, filming happened there all the time. They knew, well, we're there, things are going on. So
Yeah, but you got to remember, like Michelle would guide the experience, and I would make a cheese plate. It's true, right? It's true. Who was offering tea? Who'd get cookies? This guy.
No,
it's true. Don't lie.
No. Anyway, so because we would have events, we would have seances, we would have things, and it was just we let it go as a B&B every now and then, but very specialized. So we would have all kinds of different equipment that people could come and check out. And we've had some pretty interesting experiences there. Do you want to retell a couple of those?
Yeah, as many as you want. There was lots of them.
There was, yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, one was with a lady came in. She was with another woman. I think they were just out for a wine and dine weekend with the paranormal twist. I think that was the whole idea. Let's just go to the haunted house. It'll be fun. And I don't think they were ready for the kind of experience they had. Not that it was bad. I think it was just very powerful. And, we set up some equipment and we set the one box on the floor in the parlor and we lit it all up and said, okay, just have at her. Talk away. Who do you want to talk to? And she'll want to talk to my dad. And Michelle's like, okay, what's his name? Just say his name out loud and say what you want to hear.
Call him forward, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a little bit of quiet for a while, and she's just like, I don't think he's there. I don't think he's here. I don't think he hears me. And this voice comes through and it says, I'm here, either darling or honey or something like that. My sweet.
It was a term of endearment that he used to call her only.
Yeah, only her. And her face was just like, oh, like that, right? And she's like, Dad, is that you? And he's like, yes, it's me. She's like, I miss you. He's like, I know. We'll be together again one day. Don't worry, I'm fine. This woman was on the floor and she was like right up against the speaker,
hugging the piece of equipment,
hugging the box,
crying,
like, I miss you so much. I really needed to hear you. And it was very, very powerful because it's one thing for a medium to say, yes, your father's here, tell me what you want to hear and I'll explain what he's saying to you. It's completely different when you hear that person's voice and use the words that person used in their life with you. It's just like, it's right in your face. You can't dispute that. It's intense. Very intense.
The compelling part too is when she said, is the dog with you or whatever? And
I said that was my dad too, right?
Yeah, but she asked him to hug the dog or kiss the dog, and he went, no. He said, no, I'm not going to do that.
I'm not kissing the dog. Yeah, because she went through the whole family. Is this person
the whole
there?
Family
yes.
list.
Is that person there? Yes. Is this person there? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, hug them for me. Is the dog there? Yes, the dog is here. Kiss the dog for me. He's like, no.
Yeah. So say that, no, not going to do that with the dog. Yeah. It was very, I always have a skeptical mind in some things too, because I think there's something mimicking this and that. But I have to say, there's these key words, things that she did not expect. The
Mm,
nicknames and like there were things coming out that she claimed only she would know. So
right.
that it's nice to see. I mean, to me, if somebody can get something out of it and it brings them joy,
Yeah.
it was really worth that,
Mm.
that couple of
Well, I use the
hours.
same piece of equipment with my dad.
Yeah.
My mom was very sick, and my dad had passed years prior.
Yes.
And we reached out to him, and he came right through. And he's from the really lost the name, Yorkshire. He's from Yorkshire,
Yes.
and
You can't
had
understand
real.
them.
Oh, we used to call him mumbles. Nobody could understand him. I could understand him, and but people would come over and say, "Wait, what's your dad saying? I don't even understand what he's saying." Right? I said, "Just laugh." You know. But he comes through, and it's my dad. It's his voice, it's his mannerisms. The intonation was perfect. And it was the same thing. I said, like mom's really in a bad way. He goes, I know. I said, you got to go and stay with her. He goes, I stay with her every night.
Hmm.
Every single night I'm with her. So it made me feel better, and I went through the whole thing like the other lady did. Like, how's this? How's that? How are you? Is the dog with you? And the dog was kind of like the bane of his existence, right? So you hear, is the dog with you? And he's like, yeah.
Still,
That's totally him. Totally him.
it's just like,
Nobody could do that. No one. So it was
yeah,
perfect. I loved it.
yeah.
But the other thing that I found interesting too is I had a young group come through. There's two girls came through, and they had brought a bunch of stuff with them, and we gave them sort of a little bit of the tutoring of how to interact with a spirit from the Victorian era. You don't come in and go, "Hey, dude, what's going on?"
Mm,
or "Sup," because they just think you're illiterate.
mm,
You don't know how to speak. They won't interact with you. And I said, just when you come in, you introduce yourself. This is the person's bedroom. Ask if you can come in. Don't demand anything. Just you're in their house and their company. It's their rules. If you come at it with that, you'll have a better experience. And they're like, oh, okay. So I watched them do it. They went to. I said, no, this is Margaret's bedroom. Okay, this is where we believe her bedroom was, and these are all the reasons behind it. So you'll start off in there. So they went in and they had a red light and a white light. And the red one was no and the white one was yes. So they started to get results. And the first thing out of their mouth was like, oh shit. And then they immediately apologized. Like, I'm sorry, I have a terrible mouth. I was just so astonished. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to use profanity in your bedroom, Like and they're like, how old are you? And then the other girl's like, that's gonna be hard to answer, yes or no, right? But they got the hang of it really quick. They had an
hmm
amazing encounter, just an amazing encounter.
hmm I think
Yes,
that's
beautiful.
key. Like I always think back, to the older spirits. And I think back to the story that you've told about being at the fort.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was crazy. That was a wild night. My God.
Yeah, go ahead.
When we were at this Fort Niagara, and we went across the river and went to Fort Niagara, and there was all kinds of stuff going on, all kinds of crazy stuff. And these guys, they had a paranormal group there. They were trying to talk. The people were saying, "Oh, we know that there's 3 or 4 guys in this section." It was the cannon room, right, where they had all the cannons.
Mm,
And they're talking to them, and the one lady's like, they're just looking at each other. And I look at the woman, and I said, "That's because they're French. They're
mm,
French. They don't understand what you're saying to them. They just
mm,
don't get it." Right? It was a French fort before it was a U.S. fort.
mhm,
Anyway, we're going around, and we get a little bit of a tour, and the guide says, "Oh, we're going to go into the officers' quarters, and we've got one done up exactly where the commanding officer's room was, so you can see how it was laid out." And my partner at the time, she's walking through, and she has this huge camera with all these lenses and stuff, and so she takes a step back and she goes, "I'm just going to shoot this room." Well, the name on the camera is a cannon, right? So you got a cannon with a long barrel on it pointing into the officer's quarters and you saying, I'm just going to shoot this room, that camera flew out of her hands. Like if it didn't have a strap around her neck, that thing would have gone onto the ground and that would have been a $3,000 piece of garbage. But that was pretty, and that was a hard hit. That one, she didn't just lose it; it went sideways, like someone really smacked it hard. That was wild. They do understand what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm. It's so fascinating to me because in all the years of doing voice recordings, you hear the traditional stuff like, "Is there anybody there?" Right? And like obvious questions. But if you don't know you're dead, how would you, as a spirit on the receiving ends, answer that? You'd be looking around going, "No, I'm here." What kind of a dumb question is that? Like, what do you, two slices short of a loaf or what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a matter of having a conversation in a way that just assume that if the spirit is stuck, that maybe they just don't realize that they passed on. So I've always tried to avoid questions like that. And I've always tried to be aware. So if I'm in a historical location, for example, I would basically look, because if I'm doing events somewhere, if somebody brought me in to do an event, I would look at the historic photos, maybe the historic photos of the property, or maybe, the family members at the time. Like we would do this at the manor as well. And we knew, when you know the background story, it's a little bit easier. But I was bringing in tour groups and teaching them how to do EVPs in a way that they were likely to get like probably more credible answers aside from, "Is there anybody here?" And you have a spirit here going, like, like things like that. It's just something, especially if you're dealing with, in our case at the manor, they're very educated people. When I was at the castle, very educated people, very upper crust. So you wanted to ask questions that at least, it was worth conversing.
It is. There's a level of technology difference, and it could be simple and it could be complex.
Yeah.
I remember when you first came over with your team to investigate the manor.
Oh yeah, way back.
Way back, because I was having experiences right after I bought the place, and I said, "Why don't you come down and check it out? Because it's really wild."
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they were fascinated with tattoos. And I had a long sleeve jacket on at the time, and her medium who was with me says, "The woman of the house wants to know what's on your arm." And I'm like, "There's nothing on my arm." And he's like, "She said it's a plant." I'm like, "Oh, it's a tattoo." And he goes, "She wants to know like why you have it. Why would you do that to yourself?" I said, "Because I like it. It's just artwork and stuff." Because from their perspective, it was like, people in prison, people in the Navy, and Aboriginal people had the ink markings. Like, why would you do this? Like, you're this person who now owns my house. Like, why would you ink yourself up? So I got into the mindset of like, okay, they just don't understand where I'm at with this stuff. And I had to sort of go back into that time frame, where, their toilets were the outhouse at the back. They didn't have indoor plumbing. Mm-hmm. So I was explaining something on the second floor with one of the bathrooms, and I mentioned a shower curtain. I said, "Well, the shower curtain just keeps the water inside the tub." And he looks at me and he goes, "She says she knows what a shower curtain is. Thank you." Like, okay, well, I don't know how much you know and how much you don't. You don't know what a tattoo is or why I have it, but apparently you know what a shower curtain is, even though it was before your time. I don't know. So it gets to be a little bit tricky to sort of, to negotiate that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hit and miss. That's why you try to deal with like very generic questions or comments or things of that nature. But it was it was a journey. I still learn to this day. I try to. I don't do investigations as much anymore. I've just retired from a lot of that. But I do feel that, when I'm in a haunted location, because when I travel, I've always only stayed in haunted places. So, it's just something that once you learn, you just keep with it. And I always found some of the best recordings I ever got came from having conversations with people, not doing actual EVPs. Specific when you go in to start asking questions. I found some of the best stuff I ever got was just dropping recorders in rooms. And then I would just sit there and have a conversation, let's say, with the homeowners, or I could be having a conversation with Wayne, for example, and all of a sudden these voices, like everybody wants to be involved in the conversation, and there'd be crazy things, phantom sounds, like footsteps and chains dragging across the floor. But meanwhile, you're on like carpet in real time.
Yeah.
Like things like that, just phantom sounds and whole other conversations, people just jumping in.
Oh yeah. Phantom sounds like I used to hear nailing, like hammer and nails, like in the basement. I'd be working down the basement doing plumbing, and behind me, you're like whack, 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 and I turn around, and it would stop. It's a steel hammer on a nail. I know what it is. It's crazy stuff. It's wild. They're just phantom sounds that are just lost in the envelope of time when that house was being built.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like residual sounds.
Yeah.
But I say that with phantom sounds, I think some of them made them a little bit different. Was like this one location I was at, like we would put recordings. This specific room was in a furnace room in the basement. So it's like a concrete basement floor. And when you pick up the recorder, I was just, because I drop recorders everywhere. I'd have like 10 recorders, was just kicking around depending how many rooms there were. And I would go through the sounds. And this one here, I would tag everyone saying, furnace room, put it down, and I would tag the times and things like that. And it sounded like, first off, somebody picked up the recorder. Something was handling the recorder, put it back down. And I'm thinking, okay, that's interesting. And then I could hear old, like big, heavy boots on old hardwood floors. But meanwhile, it's in a basement. But remember, something picked up the recorder, which tells me there's got to be a degree of intelligence. It's not residual. It's not like a replay. And then somebody walked over and sat like on an old, you could hear like an old squeaky bed. You hear, like it was crazy. This place was a townhome, an attached townhome, which used to be on old farmland and indigenous land, and so there was all kinds of things there. But I didn't expect it. And you go upstairs and you have chains dragging across this old wooden floor, which was a carpet, a posh thick carpet, and you're kind of like, that's it's a real crazy mix of things.
That's different for sure. I always think that the dragging of change is so like Ebenezer Scrooge kind of stuff. I've never heard that sort of sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, listen to the sounds you heard at that one house with the recording that came from it with the ropes of an old ship.
Oh, that
creaking.
was, I'm sorry, that was at my childhood home. That's my mother.
Yeah. Well, you said, listen to this. What do you think it is? You didn't tell me what it was. I'm listening to it. It sounds like we're down by the wharf where the ships are tied
like
up.
rigging, right?
Yeah, rigging. Like the ropes are creaking while the ships are moving in the water. So it's exactly like that. They're nowhere near anything like that.
I know. And the strange thing about it was, first off, I grew up in that house. My parents had that house for 60 freaking years. Okay, a long time. Never heard things like that. Like my mother was hearing this. Okay. And I hadn't lived in that house for like decades, but she kept saying to me, it just started randomly one night. And she goes, I hear something in the corner. And she would tell me which corner it was. I'm going, that's the dining room. It's crazy. There's nothing there. Like right the other side of the wall. There's the driveway. And the cars, that specific car that's been there because my father wasn't driving anymore. So it's just this doesn't move. She goes, I don't know what to tell you. Because we lived 5 hours away at that time. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to ask you to do what I don't like people doing, but can you just record it? But don't acknowledge it. Just put your phone on or put your tablet on and just walk away and do what it is you always do. She goes, okay. So she did it for me 2 nights in a row. And it always happened at the same time. So it's like, it sounds like it should be residual because it happens at the same time. So, I said, just hold on to it. I knew I was coming to visit her in a couple of weeks. So she goes, do you want to hear that thing? I'm like, yes, but it was too big of a file to email it. My mother was not tech savvy besides that. So I said, yes, I would like to hear that. And when I'm listening to it, I could hear her sitting down on the sofa in the other room. I could hear a car go by on the street. I'm like, okay, that's benign. And all of a sudden, I hear, it's like I said, it's like rigging. It's like big, heavy rope twisting against wood. Like it's hard to explain if you just picture it, like, rope rubbing on wood. It just was like ship rigging. And that was it. I still have it to this day. It's mind blowing. And then all of a sudden, it stopped.
Yeah. And when I got there, I was thinking that I was looking at everything logical. I was looking like, is there a tree outside? There was nothing. Like I was thinking even the hydro power stack that comes in from that side, but it was at the front of the building. If that had come loose and the wind is moving the cable, it will move the power stack back and forth on the wood. That would make that sound. But I mean, I checked everything. It was solid. Everything was solid. There was nothing that could make that noise.
Right. See, it's just crazy. It's like there's these phantom sounds that come out of nowhere, and it is just fascinating. Okay, so I'm going to ask two different questions. So I will start with this one. I've heard that on the other side, we slowly lose who we are. Have you guys ever heard of that? Do you believe in that? Wayne, you want to
Lose who
start?
you are from the other side. Like, what do you mean when you?
Be on the other side, that we eventually lose who we are.
I've never heard that.
I've never heard that either.
I heard that you maintain yourself, like you're like, this is just a meat suit that I'm wearing today. Like my energy is just occupying this meat suit. But when this dissolves away, the energy is still here. That's the true me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's its essence. I think what changes is the physical. But there is that cruel joke about when you come back and you don't always remember who you are. Some people do remember. You look at these little kids, they're like, oh, yeah, when I died and you were my wife and before. It's like, what? This is little tots, But
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can go through regression and then you can get, past lives. Like for me, I got hints of past lives, like from a very early age, and things that you really resonate with, I think, is something that um, is often past life related, like, like you just, like your friend Bill with the planes.
Oh, Bill. Yeah. He's very cool. Like by the age of 5, he knew all the different distinctions of all the Spitfires ever made for World War II. At 5, like he could recite them. He was telling his dad, I got to go down to the airport. You got to take me to the museum. I got to see the Spitfires, and his dad was like, what is your fascination? And he was sure that he burned up in one, is what he said. He burned up in one and crashed. And he goes, it was the crap one. It was like the Mark IV or the Mark III or whatever they were. He goes, if I had a Mark V, it would have been fine. But
so he knew.
I had a crap one and it jammed up. Yeah. But look at that other kid. I remember watching a documentary on this kid who, for argument's sake, I want to say he's like 8 years old. And one day, his mother was just like, Alex, come in. It's lunchtime. And he comes in. He's like, why do you keep calling me Alex? She goes, because it's your name. He goes, no, it's not. It's Ferdinand. And she's like, what?
Ferdinand, no less.
He's like, yeah, you're not my mom. I don't know what I'm doing here, but like, I'm this old. I live in France. I have a wife. I have 5 kids. I run a bakery. Like, I don't know how I got here, but I am not your kid. So stop calling me Alex. So they thought he watched it on television. He figured it out and he's just playing this elaborate hoax. So they went to the trouble of actually going to this other country and getting a driver. And they told the driver, this is where we need to go, to this bakery. But I don't want you to go there. I want you to get close to there, but I want you to drive right past the street. So they get off the plane, the driver agrees, and they take off. They're going through this town. They finally get to where the bakery is going to be up the street. And as they go by the end of the street, the kid goes, you missed it. You missed it. It's on the left. Turn around. They turn around. He goes, here, it's right here. It's number 117. Stop here. And he goes in, and there's this woman making bread and doing stuff. And he walks in, and the kid walks in, and he says, hi. And she goes, hi, how are you? He goes, this is going to be really hard for you to understand, but I'm your husband. And she's like, what? He goes, yeah, I'm your husband. Like, we have 5 kids. The names are blah, 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 blah. They were born on these years, these days. I guess I died and I've come back. I don't really understand it all. And she shows him this other child. He goes, I don't know who that is. Who is this other child? This isn't my child. She goes, it's your child, but he was born after you died. Like I was already
Crazy.
pregnant with this child when you passed away.
Crazy.
This guy knew everything. This little kid knew everything. The banks where they went, the cars they had, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
See?
Wow. Like how do you even start over again? Like, your wife is like 48 years old now and you're 8.
So does this, do you think, is this why you think that we don't allowed to remember when we come over? Like, because I know when I was, communicating through, like regressive stuff and communication stuff and mediums, and I had past life people in my space, and they were clearly picked up on because I was very open to it, and I had early memories of it. I mean, so much so that I could feel sometimes like my feet on the cold cobblestone. Like I remember stuff, and it was just a matter of you go through this sense of loss again. Like I actually felt like I went through a sense of mourning, and it made me so sad. And then all of a sudden, it's just like it's almost like the memory started to fade, But I think as kids we come here remembering things, but then we hit that a stage in our life where we get busy and we just go on with our lives, and then all of a sudden it was just harder and harder for me to get that connection because obviously there were some souls that never returned.
Right. Well, as you said, I think it would be very difficult. You couldn't get on with your life here if you were constantly longing for, friends, loved ones that were in another life. You would stagnate in growth. But at the same time, I think it's a bit of a cruel joke that they take everything. You get here with a blank slate, and you're supposed to. Well, you pick up where you left off, but I don't know where I left off. Like was I a good person? Was I a bad person? Like what am I supposed to learn here? Oh, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
No, clearly not.
That's crazy.
It's bad.
Catherine, I wonder if your parents' home was built with ship timbers for the residual sounds. I know that I'm pretty certain no, because both of my grandfathers built my parents' house from a lumber store. And up north, we know the whole area at one point was hit by an asteroid, 160,000 years ago. It was all underwater, and to the point where I think when they practiced for the moon landing, they actually went to those parts in the city that resembled what they felt was the moon, because it was nicknamed like Moon City. It was crazy, like the difference. And so I don't think so, because it was in a valley next to a very small lake, but surrounded by lakes in the mountains everywhere. So is it something it was a dimensional? Was it, it would have had to have gone like way back, but none of the trees within that area were cut down to do it. So that's all I know. I have to say, I don't think so, but what do I know? Where did the wood come from that they purchased? Possible. I don't know.
Well, 2x4s wouldn't be made of beams from ships. They were all oak.
Yeah.
So I don't think so. And that area didn't even have that kind of body of water to support those kinds of vessels.
No, that's true.
Enough.
They
not
would
deep
not
enough
have
at all.
No, not at all.
Nope.
Well, and speaking of, before we get to the next question, you grew up with a girl who felt she was on Titanic.
Yeah, my neighbor across the road. That's crazy, great.
Tell that story. You guys want to hear some crazy? Listen to this one.
The stuff always happens around me, but never to me.
That's what I mean.
It's wild, right? So she was quite a few years older than me. She's a real sweetheart, and she passed away sadly a few years ago now. But just a really good soul, and she had quite a bad experience. I never knew about this when she was about 14. Wasn't really close to her when she was 14. I was probably about 6 at the time, so hang around a teenager, right? So anyway, she went to a friend's cottage and they were water skiing, and she was in the boat and they were whipping along some small lake, watching the water skier behind them, and she literally stood up in the boat and stepped off the side of it at speed. gone, and
Wow.
they turned the boat around, obviously, came back and got her, and they're like, okay, here, take my hand, we'll pull you in. She's like, I don't want to go in the boat. Like, well, you got to get in the boat. She goes, no, just I'll just hang on to the tow rope for the water skier, just drag me back. And they're like, don't be ridiculous, it's like 4 miles. Like, that's okay, I'll hang on. So they towed her back to the dock behind the boat. She wouldn't get in the boat at all. Anyway, this progressed into ridiculous, like, phobias and freakouts and night terrors and all kinds of stuff. And the psychiatrists kind of thought that it was because her dad had died in a traffic accident that she was sort of acting out, like playing out her inability to grieve, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing was working, right? And then the doctor was talking to her about it, and she's just like, no, nothing's working out, right? And she said, so they put her in observation for a couple of days. I just want to put you in a hospital for a couple of days, and just to watch you sleep and just to see what kind of things transpire. And then she's like, okay. And what you were talking about earlier is automatic writing.
Mm-hmm.
So she was writing a letter, like in their diary, or just like, I'm in the hospital, they're doing some tests on me, blah, like a journal, I guess, And she said she's writing and writing and writing and writing and writing, and all of a sudden she looked down and it wasn't her handwriting. Like, it was completely different. And it was talking about, yeah, we're going to America with my family, and we're traveling on this big ship, and it's going to be fun. We're starting a new life. We're going to meet like our aunts and uncles there, and blah, 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 right? So she shows it to the doctor, and he goes, well, how did you write this? This isn't even your handwriting. This is really old, really fancy writing. So the long story short of this thing is that he said, I would like to talk to you about a regression. And the question, what's a regression? I'm just going to hypnotize you, put you under, put you to sleep, and we're going to see where these memories are coming from. So she let me listen to this tape. Now, she was probably 20 something at that point, and I was probably 18, right? So we're just sitting on the veranda shooting the breeze and having a tea one morning, and she goes, listen to this, I'll let you listen to this thing, little tiny cassette. So it's her, she's talking, and he's like, okay, so I'm going to feel really relaxed, and the whole hypnosis thing, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to go back further and further and further and further and further. Now it's dark, right? It's very dark. And he says, now what I want you to realize is when you come out of the darkness, what you see is not real. It's not happening, right? It's not real. It's just like watching a television show, okay? So one little bit further back, and now what do you see? And she starts freaking out. And she's screaming like, I can't get out. They're closing the doors. We can't get out. Like this. And he's like, okay, that's enough. Further back, until she calms down. And now she's got a completely different accent. Like, she's got like an Irish accent. And he's like, well, where are you right now? She goes, I'm on a big ship with my family. And he's like, oh, that's really nice. So where are you going? We're going to America. Oh, that's good. Do you know what the name of the ship is? She goes, it's very big. She goes, it's Titanic. He goes, oh, what's your name? And she says her name. And she says, okay, I'm going to scrub that memory. We're going to take you out of that. And we're going to take it all away so it's gone. And I'm going to bring you out of it. She comes out of it. And when they had it all written down, the tape, everything, she went and looked up the name she said. And she was one of the people that died. She was on third class in the back of the boat, third class steerage. And she didn't make it.
Wow.
14 years old, same age as she was when she
mind blown.
Oh yeah, like I was just like, what?
Yeah, that's insane.
She goes, I wasn't afraid of the water. I was afraid of the boat because they locked us inside the boat when it sank.
Yeah. Wow. That is insane.
And she never had any problems ever again after that. Never thought about the Titanic, never had any inklings about it, no fear of boats, no fear of cottages, like nothing. Just everything went normal for her after that.
Wow. That's insane.
Mind totally blown. Wayne sitting there holding his cup of tea like, are you kidding? Wow.
Next question for you. Did you ever remember any more after you realized you were a child again?
No. Sadly, no, I didn't. It was pretty unsettling because, like, again, my parents were English immigrants, and I was born here. I was the only one born here. And so they birthday party, what's that? You know, like, you don't have birthday party. What's that all about? You know, here in Canada, we have birthday parties for kids. And so my parents' friends were sort of guiding them on how to be, right? So they had this birthday party for me. And I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. I get cake and presents and everybody's here. That's really cool. And dancing around, having a good time, having a really good time. And Wayne is not allowed to have a good time.
Oh,
Ever,
stop it.
you know, because the
Wow,
bad things come as soon
wow,
as you start
wow.
having a good time, believe me.
Yeah.
Anyway, the bad time showed up pretty quick because I remember stopping in the middle of this, like we had a big rec room downstairs, stopping in the middle of this rec room and looking at everybody who's all laughing and smiling and the music's going. And I'm looking around everybody like, who are all you people? Like just the amount of confusion I had in that moment was just like, where the hell am I? And who are these people? Why is everybody singing? And I remember looking down at my hands and going, oh my God, I'm a child again. I'm a child. And it was like, oh, I passed out. That was the end of it. Woke up in my bed and everyone gone home. And, you know, my mom just said I passed out. And apparently I threw up on the way down. And it was just too much excitement, apparently. So.
And you didn't remember anything after that?
No. I remember looking at my hands and realizing through my eyes, I was looking at the hands of a little boy who was probably 4 years old, or maybe 5. It was before, because I wasn't even in school yet. So before 4 years old, and going like, oh my God, I'm a child. I'm a child again.
Yeah.
And just being completely like, it was like the two halves of my brain suddenly just slammed together so hard. Like it was beyond comprehension in my mind that I just blacked out.
All right, next question. Michelle and Wayne, have either of you run into a demon? If so, can you tell us about it, please? Wayne, go ahead.
You've run into all kinds.
No, I know. So we'll make it about you.
Oh, why?
Go crazy. Yeah.
I've only had one experience, and it was at the manor. And it was at night. It was in November. And I was pretty used to the house by that point in time being inhabited with spirits. It was a very, very noisy house, really, quite interactive. And it was walking and doors opening and closing. Even if they didn't, you could hear the sound of people walking on the stairs, you know, that sort of stuff, all kinds of different noises and sounds. But this November, it was really quiet. And the way I put it down was, it was almost like your kids go off to school and it's really quiet in the house. There's no clatter, there's no TV, there's nothing. It was really, really quiet, really peaceful quiet. And it was extraordinarily cool in the house. Like I just chalked it up to, it's November, all the tourists are gone, it's quiet, the temperature's dropping, it's going to be cooler, right? Okay, that's fine. And I was in bed, and I woke up to my cat Sean freaking out at the end of my bed. Like, I mean, freaking out. And he had no voice. He was a stray. He couldn't meow at all. He would just go. Nothing would come out. So this particular night, I wake up to like just strained. I was like, oh, what is this ruckus? And I see him at the end of the bed, like having a meltdown. And it was funny because the room was dark. Like always kept it really dark. I like it dark. And yet I could still make him out slightly. I knew where he was. And I went to reach for him, but I couldn't move. Like I had sleep paralysis, and I just thought you woke up too quick. Just take a breath and you'll come out of it, right? And I couldn't come out of it at all. I was wide awake and couldn't move. And then I realized I also couldn't breathe. I couldn't catch a breath. This is really bad. And I kind of like rolled my head over to the left like that. And I saw like the age-old paranormal show. I was in the basement and I saw darker than dark. I used to laugh. How do you see darker than dark? And you can. I saw darker than dark. There was a shadow in the corner of this room that filled the room. Like it was massive. I had 10-foot ceilings in that room with crown molding on the top of it. And this thing filled the entire corner all the way to the top. And I'm just like, oh my Lord, look at that. So finally I was able to just kind of like focus all my thoughts off that thing, on my cat, on me, and just basically say, get off. And I sat up and I was like, okay, can breathe now. Okay, we're good. Get out of bed, open the bedroom door. Cat flies out like it's on fire, skids through the kitchen and turns around, looks back at me, and he's looking like between my legs through my ankles. And it's just like, just not having it, not having any part of that. So I get him settled down. I'm like, all right, this is not good. I got to go back and deal with this, whatever this is. And Michelle had always said to me, like, if you ever run into something bad, don't challenge it, but just don't let it away with things, right? You got to reclaim your space, right? Just don't be cocky about it, right? So I go walking back in the room, and I'm just like, all right, whatever you are, whatever you are, you're not invited. Like, I didn't bring you in here. Like, you don't belong here. Get out now. This is my sanctuary, my home, belongs to me. You don't belong here. Get out. Like, really quite loud, quite serious about it. It's like, 2:30 or 3:30 in the morning, something like that, right? And I'm alone in the house with the cat. So I have this big canopy bed, and I walked around the corner of the bed towards my side of the bed and where this thing was, and expecting to see this dark shadow, and there was nothing there. I'm like, okay, all right, we're good. Okay, so whatever it is gone. And up on the crown molding, I saw something kind of just flutter. And I looked up, and at first glance, in sort of the dim light, I only had the light on from the hallway, and I looked up, and on the crown molding, it looked exactly, in my sort of mindset, like one of those gigantic moths that you find sometimes, especially in this area. You get them. They're quite beautiful, and they're wonderful colors, and they're probably about 10 inches across. And I thought, oh, wow, look at that! Wow, isn't that neat? Anyway, when I looked at it closer, if you could picture like the size of a grapefruit, right? There was two of those very close together, and they had little black slits in the middle of them, and they blinked really slow at me. That scared me to death because it's physical. I can see it. I'm not half asleep now, and it can see me. And I mean, my instinct override was to bolt, but it was like all I did was stand there, and I screamed at the top of my lungs, like, "Get out!" Like I just like torqued it, and it was like, it was gone. Man, I'm even telling the story now, like I've got like the hairs are standing up. I got cold chills. I grabbed my phone. I grabbed the cat. And he was just petrified, shaking when I picked him up. And I went to the parlor, and I sat in the parlor with my back to the wall, and I grabbed my phone, and I called my bestie. I text my bestie because she was always like, if you ever have a problem at the house, just text me. It's on 24/7. I've got clients all over the world. Just don't never feel you're going to wake me up. I'm literally like, I need help. There's some bad shit here.
That's great.
Not kidding. I really need you right now. Like something bad's happening. Again, it's me. So after about the fourth time, I said, I hate you. I got to call you at 3:00 in the morning. And I just get, hi, you've reached Michelle. I can't get the phone right now.
Nothing came through.
Nothing until 7:30 in the morning. They all came through at once.
And you read about things like this where they can hinder things. Nothing came through.
Nothing came through.
And the next morning, like 7:30, bing, 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 bing.
Yep.
I'm just like, what the hell happened?
Oh yeah.
And I called you. I'm like, what happened? Like all this is coming in right now.
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was.
It was brutal, just brutal. And like nobody was happier to see the sunrise that morning than I did. When I saw it started coming over the top of the rooftops, I'm just like, whoa, this was like, felt like I was in a battle for my life, honestly. Like I know how people must feel in war at night when, they're waiting for the sun to come up just to catch a breath, because that's exactly what it felt like. It was horrible.
Yeah, it was crazy. And you read about things like that all the time, how, spirits or entities can block that. There's a lot of things, I mean, that, they can block. You see that there's situations that I've worked with where the wife is under attack and the husband sound asleep in bed, just couldn't wake up, almost like comatose. It's like insanity, but I think it's important to factor in, because I know we're coming up to, a few minutes before we end the show. But when you're looking at different ways of communicating with spirits, A lot of these ancient way rune stones, big one. Not just talking boards, pendulums. It's not the tool. It's really not the tool. It's the intention of communicating. If you have the intention of communicating, whether you're using, and now we get into modern stuff like, the spirit boxes, you get into the um, uh, voice recorders, phone apps. There's so many different things there that open the door. And essentially, be prepared. If you're going to open the door, it's one of those careful what you wish for things. I mean, if you really want the experience, are you seasoned enough, or are you versed enough? Are you gifted enough? Do you trust in yourself and your sixth sense? So if something is just sort of fudging with you, are you going to know? Because I've seen some really amazing, gifted people completely get duped, and I think everybody gets duped at some point. I mean, these things are very good at what they do. So if you're going to open the door, be sure you know what's coming through. At least more than the halfway mark, more than 50-50. I mean, you really, really want to have be prepared and have a backup plan, because sometimes things are not what they seem. And I have worked with people with pendulum hauntings, EVP, where it started with a pendulum, it started with an EVP, started with a spirit board, I had a man come up to me at a show one time, and he said, his daughter was having problems. She was 12, and she watched, he traveled a lot, right? So she was home with the sitter or the nanny, and, started watching all kinds of paranormal shows, and, wanted to make his little girl happy. So, he went to the science store, bought her EMF detectors, and got her, little bits of ghost hunting stuff, and things started happening in the house. So now we've got this little girl who's probably about 12 and is probably having a lot of psychokinesis, because she's probably been in puberty for at least a couple of years. And right, so you've got this whole mix of stuff that's happening, which that alone will make her a target, and she's communicating and initiating communicating. And so now, he goes, oh, doors open and close by themselves. And I'm in my mind, I'm trying to figure out, is she just PKing, or has something come in through an unwilling form of communication? Right. So always
They
just
never did get back to you, though. That's
no,
interesting, isn't it?
yeah, no clue. They sought me out, and after that, it was just like, so who knows? I really don't know, but I really do think that people need to be very cautious. And this is the time of year, and we're going to do a show on this next week. This is the time of year where people tend to throw caution to the wind a little bit more. So, getting into next week's shows on Beyond the Outer Realm, Mark Ollie returns, and in the spirit of Halloween, with a discussion on the ancient connection between witches and the devil. So that'll be fun. Wednesday is my very dear friend Nathaniel Gillis, who returns to talk about, again, his dark research, repercussions and risks that many people take, not only in investigations of the paranormal. A lot of seasoned investigators already know, they are taking risks. And what about those who just seek it out because it's the time of year? It's October, it's Halloween season, right? Go to the spooky places, go on the tours, look for ghosts, etc. So risky business, flirting with the unseen is what that's going to be. Thursday, Daryl Walsh joins me, and we're going to be talking about the origins and traditions of Halloween, which will be a lot of fun. So that is the lineup for next week. Any last words, Wayne?
No, I'm good. That was good.
Okay,
I enjoy it. Always like being here with you.
Yeah, so it was good. It was a lot of fun. And of course, guys, thank you. You guys just make it that much more fun. You really do. Always so happy to share space with you all and bounce ideas around, et cetera, et cetera. But you have been listening to The Outer Realm with myself, Michelle DeRoche, my compadre, Wayne Mallows, talking about exploring the age-old obsession of spirit communication and getting answers from outside the realm of normal, Heard a few haunted tales along the way, a few interesting things that go hand in hand with our curiosity about the unseen
Curiosity
realm.
killed the cat. Remember that?
I know.
Mm-hmm.
We've been broadcasting on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM, 105.3 FM. And we shall see you guys on Tuesday. Actually, you're going to see me on the Angel Rock with Laura Lee Potvin Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to be picking up on a part 2 where we left off last time she was on the show. So it's going to be some pretty awesome paranormal talk. And hope that you'll be able to join us for that. Until then, have a fabulous weekend, everybody. And we will see you all next week. Thank you and good night.
Have a great weekend. Bye.